There is a dark, dark, dark side of the happy meal. I think it's a shame, really, it's a shame. In the past year, many cases of systematic sexual harassment. Systematic, it's not only 1, 2, 3, 10. No, it's a systematical system. It's a shame. I choose to hold this hearing today in order to listen on the first step, the survivors and the unions, and to end the situation of silence.
The company continues to hide behind their global brand standards. No one that I know has ever seen these standards, and the cases continue to mount day by day.
McDonald's is one of the biggest employers in the world. With more than 2 million workers, it is also Europe's biggest restaurant chain, with around 300,000 workers across Europe. Many of them are young, on their first job, with the right to go to work with no fear, without facing violence or sexual harassment. McDonald's must negotiate with us, protect their workers, and respect trade unions everywhere.
1 in 3 women in Europe are affected by physical or sexual violence, and 1 in 2 women in the EU have experienced sexual harassment since the age of 15. This does not mean that global companies like McDonald's are not responsible to take actions against the sexist and misogynistic work culture of harassment in their own backyard. On EU level, the EWL supports the Commission's proposal for a directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence to bring minimum standards of criminalization of certain forms of violence against women, especially rape, female genital mutilation, and some forms of online violence.
I worked in McDonald's in Le Havre. I started when I was 18 until I was 23, and during that period me and other colleagues suffered moral and sexual harassment. In McDonald's we use more energy to sanction the victims than to protect them. They managed to fire me by looking for information in my private life, and I was then fired for liking a comment on Facebook, and in the following weeks they encouraged the other organizers of the strike to resign. This is a major multinational and it enjoys total impunity, because today McDonald's can do whatever it pleases with its workers. It can do so because legally McDonald's is untouchable. What you said is that McDonald's hides behind its franchise system, and this is the typical strategy of big multinational companies to dilute their strategy. And this is what we are trying to address here at the European Parliament with the Directive on Due Diligence. Yes, moral and sexual harassment is illegal, and it can no longer happen, be it in France, Brazil, or elsewhere.
When I first started, I thought McDonald's was a very nice job. But my third store I had moved to, that's where the sexual harassment happened. And since workers like me do not have a union at McDonald's, it leaves us with no protection. And it makes us feel like it's okay, but it's really not. Managers don't encourage us to speak out about any sexual harassment issues. They want us to keep quiet. We are people and we matter. We're women and we also matter. I believe that the CEOs, the top dogs who are running the corporation, who's hiring all the supervisors, and the supervisors who's hiring the managers, and the managers who's hiring us, all of those guys needs to hold a sexual harassment training very thoroughly to understand the concepts of what sexual harassment is, what can you do to fix it, how can we go about it when a worker speak out about it to a management or a supervisor or even the owner of the corporation.
We know that these brave women have had the courage to stand up and speak out, and they have filed suit, and some have gone on strike. And I have been proud to stand with them as well. Time has run out. Now we are calling on the CEO, Chris Kempczynski, and everyone under him to take real action.
I used to work there for around 6 months, and those were the worst 6 months of my life. I suffered sexual abuse, harassment, and humiliation overall. My manager would touch me inappropriately. He would send me photos of his intimate parts, and he told me that if I wouldn't have sex with him, I could not be promoted. And I was afraid of losing my job, and I would often be afraid, and I wouldn't tell anyone. So I kept that pain inside of me, not to tell anyone. It's unacceptable that we have to be here talking about sexual harassment, racism, homophobia. We all know that those are crimes. I was working there, and I was the only person who was employed in my family at the time. But I got up in the morning, I went to work. I would start work at 6 in the morning, and during my break, my lunch break, I fell asleep in the company's locker room where there was a couch there. And when I woke up, my manager was ejaculating on top of me while I was sleeping. So I woke up in that situation, and that's an image, a situation that stayed with me. It follows me everywhere I go, because it's really not easy to suffer something like that. It's not easy to be in an environment like that. I hope nobody else will have to suffer something like that. At the moment, I didn't ask for help. I wanted to die at that moment. And how many more young people will have to come here and to tell their story of bullying, of racism, sexual harassment, homophobia, until McDonald's changes. Fortunately, in Brazil, every year we have very serious complaints. The situation is outrageous and goes against our constitution and labor law and human rights. Psychological damage suffered in the workplace is harmful. There are reports of sexual and moral harassment in the company, especially against black women and LGBT people. We are outraged by the kind of harassment and the lack of respect.
We thank you for your fight. And I say that not in the type of way that people come along and say things. I mean that for real. That we need to find a way for all of us to work together to back you in your fight so you can win it. Second message I have is to McDonald's leadership, because Tonya is right. The people at the top should be ashamed of themselves. And everything from the size and shape of the burger to how long it's cooked for, to how long the lights go on, go off, is in the franchise. McDonald's could today make an obligation of the franchise to say you have to have a trade union and you have to have training on sexual harassment. They could do that today.